Welcome back to the Asia Political Review. Today's topic is scam centers and cybercrime in Southeast Asia. So today I am very pleased to welcome another special guest, Luke Hunt, a veteran journalist and correspondent who has spent decades reporting across Southeast Asia and who has followed the region's politics from conflict to criminal economies from the ground up. So that view matters today because the region, Southeast Asia, is one of the most fastest growing, and this story is very disturbing. And it's no longer just about cybercrime. It's about human trafficking. It's about forced labor. It's about corruption. All of it, state weakness, wrapped up into a multi-billion-dollar scam industry. So the data doesn't lie. Recent reporting shows how big, how complex the problem has become. In Myanmar, for example, rights groups, human rights groups, have said that more than 5,300 people are still held in scam centers along the Thai border. And even after lots of pressure, political pressure, and these various crackdowns, a recent UN estimate suggested that the number of people trafficked in Southeast Asia is around 300,000 people. And the industry gains about $64 billion annually. So in Cambodia, for example, which is very central to this story, and this is where Luke's reporting is so important, because it suggests that the industry is adapting rather than disappearing. And this story of his suggests that Amnesty International says that suspected scam sites in Cambodia were still operating despite a crackdown, and that only a fraction of identified locations had been acted upon by authorities. And then at the same time, police in Vietnam have disrupted scam networks that were reportedly relocating from Cambodia, which shows you how quickly these operations shift whenever there is pressure in one country. So the thing is that this is not what you call a single issue or single country enforcement problem. This is a regional criminal ecosystem, because these compounds, these scammers survive by moving people, by moving money, by moving technology across borders. Particularly in areas where governance, where law enforcement is very weak, where corruption is high, where it is tolerated, and where armed groups or criminal syndicates can protect their businesses. That is why the scam centers, the scam center phenomenon, is one of the clearest tests for Southeast Asian countries. Whether or not they can cooperate against a crime model, which is very profitable and very adaptable. And the Thai-Cambodia border conflict, which I've talked about earlier, suggests that sometimes cooperation can come to a halt. So this is why Luke Hunt's reporting, is so important, because he is so seasoned on this topic and he can help all of us make sense of it, because he understands the political and regional dynamics behind the headlines. So let me show you this interview that I just did with him. But before I do that, and this is a sort of a gentle reminder, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, enjoy the interview. Here's that now. Well, thank you very much, Luke, for joining me. It's really an honor to have you. Your
Yeah.
reporting from the Diplomat and from other channels has been critical to my understanding of Southeast Asia and the broader region, particularly on the subject of the day, which is scam centers and cybercrime. So, my first question to you is really based on your reporting. You reported a lot on scam compounds, but it seems to me that the operations keep going. So, what are these governments doing to dismantle these networks? Or are they just like sort of like pushing them across the borders? Why is it that these networks always stay one step ahead of the law? Why do they always stay one step ahead of the authorities?
Uh, there's a lot in there to unpack. More than a fair
Sure.
question. More than a fair question. The short answer is the governments have been corrupted by this, and it goes back a long, long way. And you can take it back to the mid 2010s, say in Cambodia, where the Western businesses, Western governments were eschewed. The Chinese came in, massive building projects began. There's a plan to at least 1 million, to bring at least 1 million people into Cambodia.
Mm.
Others say up to 5 million who are going to buy these apartments in places like Sihanoukville, in particular, but also in Phnom Penh and around the country. Now, Sihanoukville became the hub of activity for the scammers.
You're talking about
And
Chinese.
yeah,
Yeah.
Chinese gangs.
Yeah. Criminal
We won't
syndicates. Yeah.
name them. We won't name them. But yes, Chinese gangsters. But the point was that in 2019, Hun Sen, then Prime Minister, outlawed online gambling.
Mm.
Then COVID hit. Now, what you had was several 100,000, 400,000 or 500,000 legitimate Chinese business people who were setting up operations in Cambodia, all legal. They left. What you were left with was the gangsters, 20, 30, 40,000. I've heard more. Now, importantly, is that places like Sihanoukville and up around the border areas have always been an area unto their own. As much
Right.
as you've got, dictatorial regimes kind of emerging in Cambodia and certainly Myanmar, but and the governments will claim we are in control. So I mean that's their words. We are in control, and anybody who knows Cambodia knows they're not.
Yeah.
And these gangsters have been able to run rife ever since by taking their knowledge in terms of running online gambling and then just totally industrializing human trafficking, scam networks, what they do, how they do it with nastiness, viciousness, and they're able to pay off
Right.
the local
Right.
authorities to continue their operations. There was money going through all the way up to the top. It's 11 billion a year thereabouts in Cambodia alone. It's about a
Mm.
third of the country's GDP. Now, then you've got different sorts of side businesses carrying on. And this is
Yeah.
important for your question, in that my understanding is that the the powers that be, the ruling elites, are no longer directly involved in scamming. They are trying to crack down on it, but you have tycoons and in their circle of friends who they are intensely loyal to,
Mm.
who are who are still to this day leasing out abandoned special economic zones, the
Yeah.
property,
That's right.
everything that goes along with it. And there's what I'm told, there's an element of they're trying to cut out corruption outside the government circle. But inside the government circle, it's still ongoing because there are there are many factions within the ruling Cambodian People's Party in Cambodia, and they need to keep those factions content.
Yeah.
They need, if they're not making money, if they're not bringing in the money, then there will be problems. And this is what they seriously need to deal with. The easy example, the obvious example, is the politicians in the Senate, the three of them, Leon Fat,
Hmm.
Tri and Cochran, who
Hmm.
are businessmen with CPP ties that go all the way back to the start, back to the 1990s.
Right.
Now,
Right.
while the Cambodians have bowed to Chinese pressure and deported Chinese tycoons who were running the scam operations, like Chen Ji, who ran
Mhm.
Prince Bank, and
Right.
several others. No one is touching the Cambodian side of the operations. And there are arrest warrants out for all three in
Hmm.
Thailand. All three have been sanctioned by the US and UK. And to give you an idea of the loyalty factor, is shortly after Prince Bank was sanctioned, tipped into bankruptcy, and Shenji was deported, there was a meeting of the Senate. Now, former Prime Minister Hun Sen is now chief of the Senate. His son, Hun Manet, is running the
Correct.
country.
Yeah.
And so on Fresh News, you can look it up yourself. Fresh News, which is a government
Fresh
thing.
news.
Yeah.
Legitimate source here.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It is for the government. It is for the government, and
Fantastic.
exactly, and it carried uh, it, it carried a meeting of the Senate. It was not, the meeting didn't really matter that much, but the photos that accompanied that story was um, the people who attended, and in the front row, there they were, Lee Yong Fat, Tri Piet,
Yeah.
and Kokhan, with their wives, all dressed up to the nines. And it sends a message that these people are untouchable.
Yeah.
And the extent of um, their involvement with operations as of today, it's very difficult to know.
Mm.
I suspect it's not like what it was. But the problem they have is they say 330,000 scammers have left. Well, on that basis, there must have been 500,000 in there or more. And the kids who went in there, particularly the ones who were complicit, there are, you know, hundreds of thousands were human trafficked, no doubt.
Right.
Lots of horrible, horrible things have happened to people: torture, killing, rape. It's all well documented.
Right. Right.
There's no secret. They can't hide from that.
No.
But there were a lot of people who were complicit. In fact, I was reading a story the other day about how a Chinese chap from Singapore has been sentenced to 18 months. He went to Cambodia voluntarily,
Mhm.
applied for a job to work in a scam compound. He wasn't very good at it, and he was sacked after 3 days. They sacked him.
Oh.
And then he went back to Singapore and he was caught and he's been jailed for 18 months. What I'm getting at is that not everybody is a victim.
Right.
And the problem with these people, and they come from all, right around Asia,
Right.
is that they're returning home, or in Cambodia and in Myanmar. They're splintering across the country. They're setting up operations by themselves, kooky little rooms in hotel dorms and places like that.
I've seen
And
that. Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
re-establishing operations in Nepal, in Sri Lanka, in India.
Yeah. Yeah.
And with the advent of AI, which has all of us, nervously sitting on the edge of our seats, it's going to be
Very
really
difficult to
interesting to
do.
see where it goes next. But it's a phenomena that is not going to end.
Yeah, and this lack of AI governance and across Southeast Asia is
Yep.
really going to give these people a significant advantage. So um, you talked about the scammers.
Yep.
Could have been 500,000. There are lots of people, Chinese and other nationalities involved in this. But let's talk a little bit about the victims. And
Mm-hmm.
there are a number of stories. I know The Guardian ran a few stories on this
Yep.
about folks who were freed. There were some African victims. There was the famous example of the Chinese actor slash model who was, for example, taken from Thailand, where he was on vacation, to Myanmar to work in the scam compound.
Mhm.
But a lot of folks aren't really free after they've been rescued. And what happens is they end up getting at risk again. So explain for the audience how people end up in this sort of perpetual cycle of vulnerability.
A lot of it's got to do with the laws in Cambodia.
Yeah.
So
Can you
uh,
expand to Myanmar as well?
Myanmar's a little bit different because you've got the junta, the civil
Yeah.
war.
Yeah.
A lot of it's happening in places like Shui Koko,
Right,
which is
right.
near Mirawaddy, about 20 kilometres north. And
Correct.
that's controlled by the Border Security Guard, or the BSG, and a faction in Karen State aligned with the military.
Correct.
And so you've got the Karen National Union, who has been fighting for control of Mirawaddy, and they're trying to stamp it out. And it's just, it's a mess. And what we
Yeah,
do here,
that's putting it lightly. Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah.
and what we are hearing from Myanmar is that they're getting, I mean, it's a war. God bless Myanmar, 100,000 dead in 5 years. That's double
Awful.
the number than
Yeah.
Gaza.
Right,
You've
right.
got no jobs, no future, conscription awaits.
And
And so,
it's not just from the it's not just from the junta, it's from the other groups as well.
yeah, sure. And
Yeah,
and so what you've got now is that they're pushing the scam compounds further inland, not along the border.
correct.
Along the
Yeah,
border areas, they can operate as they can use Thai facilities, electricity, internet, water, those kinds of things. But so now they're pushing them further inland,
yeah.
and they're getting
Cutting
a lot
off
of people
electricity
who
doesn't seem to work.
no, it didn't work at all. They en
Yeah,
masse, they crossed the border over
yeah,
the Friendship Bridge from Mirawaddy into May Sot, and
yeah, right.
the industrial warehouses had a field day in selling generators, and
That's
Elon,
awful, but funny.
yep,
Uh,
and Elon Musk's Starlink routers. They bought them all up when they cut the internet connections. But yeah, sorry. Getting back to your question,
yeah, go ahead.
uh, can you remind me?
I'm talking about the cycle of vulnerability that
Oh,
people end
yeah.
up in. Yeah,
If you're from a country that doesn't have an embassy in Myanmar or Cambodia, you've got big issues.
yeah,
Now, what has happened in Cambodia is that people who have been freed from these compounds, their visas have expired.
mhm.
And so, yeah, the Cambodian government isn't saying you're, uh, you know, wow, this is, you're a victim. This is really bad. What's happened? Let's see how we can sort this out and get you home. What they're saying is your visa has expired and you owe us $10 a day.
Oh,
You've been there 2 or 3 years, that adds up. Now, if you're in Thailand, if you overstay your visa, it's $1,000 flat fee. Give us $1,000, leave. In Cambodia, it's $10 a day. It keeps adding up, and then I've got a lot of reports where victims
that's
have
its
been
own
released.
form of corruption. That's awful.
Sure.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
legally corrupt. I mean, if that
yeah,
makes it's
exactly. Well, yeah, yeah,
tautology or
yeah, yeah,
but oxymoron, one or the other. But anyway,
yeah.
yeah. So then they get released, and then it'll be you've overstayed your visa. We're going to put you in jail. And then it's like, but I'm a victim of trafficking. This has happened. And in the early days, I'm not saying this is happening now, but
Yeah, okay.
certainly in the early days, they were given an ultimatum. Okay, you can go over there, stay there. We'll get in touch. If you have an embassy, we'll get in touch with your embassy.
Right,
And if you make any allegations about the scam compounds or human trafficking, we'll charge you for working in a scam compound. So you had all this sort of ballistic little corruption
that's
firing off
that,
everywhere.
that's
And then, right. And then a lot of these people come from countries like Bangladesh and India, and
right,
they're
right,
embarrassed to go home. They don't have passports.
right,
Where some governments, like full cred to the Indonesians, they looked after their own very well. They
right.
sent in chartered flights. They picked them up. They took them home.
Yeah,
same with the Vietnamese and the Thais, but they're border countries, so it's a lot easier to
Yeah.
facilitate.
Yeah.
Uh, and there's an awful lot of people still in the bars in Phnom Penh. You see them walking into the local bar and in groups,
Right.
and it's I, it's hard to know. I mean, you don't know whether or not to. Should I empathise? Should I sympathise? These people are drinking beer in a bar and smoking weed, and it's like, it's and walking around town as if nothing has happened
Yeah.
when we all know people have been scammed.
Yeah. Right.
And it's a right mess. But I think slowly it'll clear up, but it's going to take another few years. And
Mhm.
that's based on what we have now. God
Yeah.
knows what's
Right.
going on next.
Right. Interesting. So, you've reported on a lot of things. So from cyber scams, we talked about organized crime, but there's also a kind of human trafficking element too, and this is
Oh,
very
sure.
interesting. So, if you blend them all together, right, do the governments in the region see this as one big problem yet, or are they seeing them as separate issues?
Uh, they are awake to the problem.
Yeah,
The
right.
amount of money. I know uh, someone who mentioned it to Anwar Ibrahim, the Prime Minister of Malaysia in the early days, and he just simply didn't believe the numbers that were involved. It's colossal.
Mm.
The and the same goes for a lot of other governments as well.
Yeah.
The ASEAN has not done a good job.
Good
Cambodia,
point.
the scam issues between has caused a war between Cambodia and Thailand.
Right.
The border remains closed.
Yeah.
There is no uh, cooperation between the pair on this issue anymore.
Yeah.
Uh, Anything that happens out of Myanmar is just kind of thuggery and illegal and what people can orchestrate from the border.
Mhm.
Then you've got there is some cooperation going on between, say, in Australia, the Australian Federal Police or
Sure.
the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, there's
Right.
Singapore monetary authorities with the central bank in Cambodia because they can shut down access to money for the Cambodians.
Right.
So there are these kinds of institutional uh, wheeling and dealings going on to try and sort this mess out. I mean,
Mm.
try and get money out of Cambodia, it's almost impossible these days.
Right.
And then
No,
you've got,
no,
just
no
quickly,
pressure from the Chinese on the Cambodia,
oh,
Thailand.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's almost a
Yeah.
separate issue, though, but
Oh,
remind
okay.
me,
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
come to that. But there are other issues too, like this is a big issue in Europe, is Interpol fit for purpose?
Yeah.
And
True.
there's a lot of criticism about Interpol at the moment. There was a famous example where an Iranian dissident who had refugee status in Italy was picked up by Interpol and sent back. That's not their job, and
Yeah.
it's so and then the nature of crime has changed so much. It's a lot trickier to try and sort this out. And the Chinese, the Chinese. I've heard allegations before that the Chinese behind it as well. Chinese criminal gangs, yes. Chinese government, no.
Right.
They are extraordinarily embarrassed by all this. And along with the Koreans were the ones who really stuck it on the front page and blew it
Yeah.
out of all proportion because they had hundreds of their
Yeah.
citizens being kidnapped.
Yeah, and you've
And
got these the tourism impact. People are
oh, it's
scared to
gone.
come to people are scared to
Right.
come to Thailand. People are
That's right.
scared to come to Cambodia.
That's
That
right.
hurts Siem Reap. That hurts the people who want to come to Bangkok. That cancel their vacations, and it puts domestic pressure at home. Sure. Yeah.
I've got I know of incidences where you've had I'm just thinking of one chap at the moment, a Singaporean, educated, nice, decent sort of bloke, walked up to a friend of mine who's English and he said, "Oh, do you mind if I sit at this table?" I said, "No, sit down." They had a quick beer and they had a chat and he said, wow, this is Cambodia. And he's like, yeah. The conversation went about, you don't have no idea how scared people are coming here, about coming here.
Yeah.
That's why he went. He'd always wanted to go and see Angkor Wat, but he'd been too frightened. And I think it's sort of, adventure tourism. And it really,
Adventure tourism.
well, that's what it used to be like back in the 90s and 2000s.
Yeah,
That's when being a backpacker was fun. They don't do it now. Everything's sort of sugar coated and dressed up as like a Disney World kind of thing. But what you're saying is completely right. People are frightened, scared to go to Cambodia, and certainly Myanmar. There's the civil war on top of that. But
it's interesting because I've been to Cambodia many times, and it just seems like this is a new thing. Whether you go to the capital or you go to
getting old,
Siem
it's
Reap or Angkor
generation.
Wat, you don't see yourself as a target, but this newfound fear for a lot of folks is real.
Look,
Uh,
I had a group of students from Singapore going up to May Sot to interview refugees,
yeah,
victims of war kind of thing, and they were it was when the scam compounds at Shui Coco were first hitting the headlines.
yeah,
And I advise them. I mean, the students you give your time freely, and that's good. They can have anything they want.
sure.
And so I advised them A, B, C, D, ran them through lectures I've given at university before, and that's fine. Then I get a call back about 3 days later, just before they're about to leave, and young lady's there, and she's like, "Can I talk to you?" Yeah, just call me. And then my parents wanted me to ask you a question. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like looking at had the same expression on my face. And she said, if I go to May Sot, will I be kidnapped? And I'm like, oh God, you poor thing, come here. And I actually organised them security details and friends, colleagues to escort them, and they were fine. But yes, it's a major issue, and this is not going to go away over the next year or two. It's simply not going to vanish. And going back to China, do not underestimate how important China is in all this. The Chinese had been wanting the Cambodians to knock it off.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a very good chance that if the Cambodians had listened to the Chinese 2 or 3 years ago, they could have kept their money and just walked away,
Right.
just shut it down. But
Yeah.
they just kept going and going and going. And then where it really started to escalate in terms of crackdowns was early last year when the Chinese backed a Thai military crackdown along its borders with Myanmar, Laos, and Cambodia.
Yeah.
My sources tell me that the Cambodians were told that they weren't really going to go after the scam compounds on the border with Thailand. This was that was when Paetongtarn Shinawatra was prime minister. Was this deal with Hun Sen? But the military wasn't listening. The Thai military, and they certainly cracked down on the scam compounds in Cambodia operating across the border, and that was one of the big sparks that started the war last year.
Interesting. So I have a related question. It's interesting. You reported on this and you talked about your sources and your sort of various sort of inside information. But we have a common associate, Murray Hunter. He was arrested in Thailand.
Yep.
He's a fellow Australian, of course. And I was just thinking about the pressure that journalists face when they report on networks like these. And so kind of a weird thing to say, but I know that there's self-censorship out there, and there's various forms of censorship for your own safety. But are there things that you can't say safely? Are there things that you sort of have to correct yourself on?
Absolutely, all the
Yeah,
time. You
yeah.
go back 10, 15 years ago, we never pulled our punches. But last year, myself and 4 colleagues were threatened by lawsuits.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
And that was a big one. I've got 40 years in journalism, and I had had to deal through the courts 5 or 6 lawsuits in various shapes or forms.
Yeah.
And where it's all changed is that, and this goes back to what you mentioned, Murray Hunter. When you go back 10, 15 years ago, defamation was civil. It was in the civil courts. You could sue
Right.
somebody, get
Right.
some money, an apology, a correction, and that was the limit of it. Now it's all been criminalised, and in
Mhm.
Cambodia you have pre-trial detention. So if and also they're threatening to pursue us in courts. It's transnational slaps.
Yeah.
It's a
Suits against
strategic,
public participation. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
and so you're not kind of you got to be extremely careful about what you say.
Mm.
Uh, they launched uh, this attack on us. I had to leave because it wasn't from the government; it was from Prince Bank, and that must be emphasised.
Yeah.
And so I had to leave, and the government. I'm getting calls from sources as
Yeah.
the war escalated. Why aren't you here? And I'm like, well, Prince Bank. And it's like, well, that's not from us. I'm like, yeah, but it's your laws. It's criminal defamation and pre-trial detention. And also, there was a time when, if you go back 20 years ago, attacks on foreigners, including the press, were normally across Asia, were normally orchestrated from the top down.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at the number of cases right across Southeast Asia, the types of people who are getting in trouble for criticizing a government on Facebook,
Oh, I
these
know.
charges,
I
it's
know.
extraordinary. These charges are being initiated from lower level officials.
This is there's a case last year, I think, where the publishers of the Isan record, they made a documentary. I don't know if you know them, and they were hit with a slap lawsuit by
But
a Thai politician. So just simply reporting on stuff is
it's interesting.
off
Thai
limits.
politicians.
Yeah,
A lot of these cases
I think it was a
really
Thai
are.
senator actually. Yeah,
Okay. No. That's interesting because a lot of these cases are really coming out of uh, the business world.
yeah,
A lot of it's
yeah. That's
companies, but
true.
then, as we all know, is that the separation of powers isn't exactly a strength in Asian democracies, and
That's
there's a
true.
lot of politicians with extensive business interests, and sometimes it's difficult to
To
separate.
separate the two.
Why
Yeah.
are you doing
Yeah.
this? What's the real reason?
Yeah. So okay. So what? One last question for you. Your reporting on this issue is extensive, and from what you've seen on the ground, what do you think's the biggest missing piece? We could fix this if it's possible. I mean, we're talking about, do we need better policing? Do we need stronger political will? I'm not so sure about that one. Or do we need more substantive cross-border cooperation? I know that that's probably an impossibility with the Thai-Cambodia issue going on, but what's the missing piece, if you think that's a reality?
The first and only thing that comes to mind is we need stronger Western involvement. The Americans under Trump have completely pulled out, and that
They have
we all know
abandoned
they can't
Asia
sit there and
completely.
say,
Yeah,
"I
I
agree
totally
on
agree.
everything." No,
Yeah.
I was with as a freelancer. I was with VOA for 17 years, all gone, and
Yeah, the VOA and the RFA.
yep. But
Yeah.
the point is
Yeah.
that there was an oversight in there, and people who would be covering these stories is just gone. Now, it's not just the journalism; it's also the NGOs and the human rights groups. So now
But
we
they're
have
under so much pressure now. They're
right.
under so much pressure. Yeah.
Remember, groups like Global Witness would do these
Yeah,
reports
exactly. Yeah.
on. But what we have in their place are journalists who are applying for grants, say through the Pulitzer Center,
Yeah.
then going out and basically doing the jobs of NGOs. And I mean, I take them seriously. They're very good journalists and they do a great job, but it's on that edge of activism.
We can't, I mean, I'm not saying you are, but you can't put this on the backs of civil society. They're under too much political pressure. They just
Well,
are. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And the reason why they're under so much pressure is because Western governments, not just the Americans, were always, leading by strength and stealth and more money than anybody
Yeah.
else. And and
Yeah.
and did and you know a little bit Puritan sometimes, which annoyed a lot of people, but they did a
Wow, that's
tremendous
an
job.
interesting term to use. Yeah, sure, sure. I get it. Yeah.
They always say the difference between the Americans and the Australians is the Americans got the Puritans and the Australians got the convicts. But the, the point being that without this oversight, without this involvement, we don't do foreign aid like we used to. And there's good reason for that because these countries simply are not as poor as they used to be. And they have education systems, health systems. Uh, compare Thailand now with 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it's
Yeah.
extraordinary.
But
And
that's
so,
in Cambodia, that's a sensitive issue because the foreign aid is used as a political tool. This was one of the reasons why the Cambodian National Rescue Party was partially undermined.
yes, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah,
Completely right.
yeah,
And I know there's a lot of speculation about re-engaging. So, for instance, the Australians kind of pivoted towards the Pacific because of China's growing influence, and I know now they're heading back towards Southeast Asia, as are the Europeans and other countries, to actually try and fill a void left by the Americans. And at the same time, without I don't want to get. I'm not American. I'm not here to criticize
Hey, I'm an
America.
American. I criticize my government all the time.
That's your right. That's
Yeah,
exactly your right.
yeah,
I don't want to, and I don't want to trivialize anything. But my understanding too is that the Americans are looking at reinvesting in Southeast Asia, and they're coming. They do want to go back, and they're looking at how they do that. Now, what the Americans did do in terms of the way they cut aid was pretty much what the Australians and the Europeans and other countries did 10 years ago,
mm,
and have since corporatized it and returned. But what I'm getting at is what's one single factor missing in this entire equation?
mm,
I know the Americans and the Brits have done a lot more behind the scenes of late,
mm,
particularly those two,
yeah,
is that it's the lack of Western engagement compared with years gone past. And as such, it was just, they were too slow to catch on to what was happening.
yeah,
And they didn't want to believe it. It's sort of the whole what was happening in Sihanoukville in terms of scamming, human
yeah, yeah,
trafficking,
right.
money laundering. It just hit them out of left field because they weren't looking.
Yeah,
And
but
it's taken,
this is not just the fault. I'm just going to say that this is not just the fault of the Trump administration, but
yes, absolutely.
that the Biden administration had dragged its feet and took its eye off the ball for years as well.
It's exactly right.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
uh, Barack Obama's pivot to Asia, if you call it that, because
It's a
it was
failure. Yeah,
right, and
yeah,
it came very late in the game. So I mean, how can you call it a pivot? Well, okay, you've got a year left in office, and now you're making a pivot. I mean, what's that going to achieve? And then Trump comes in, and he quite famously ignored. I mean, there's a lot of positions in the State Department which simply uh,
yeah.
weren't filled.
Right. That's right.
And
And it's hard to
that's
fill them too. That actually.
right.
Yeah.
And then Biden came in, and sleepy Uncle Joe. Okay, he kind of righted the ship in America in many, many
Yeah.
ways, but foreign policy wasn't
Yeah.
really a
Yeah.
strong point. And then we have Trump again, and I'm not going to get onto the
Right.
Trump bandwagon
Yeah.
because really, when you look at what's happening abroad, it's not that different to the way
Yeah.
other countries have behaved. And and you got to say one thing for Donald Trump is that he is one of the few that actually stood up to China
Fair
in
enough. Fair
other
enough.
rounds. And we actually have, which is interesting because I think relations with China are very good at the
Yeah.
moment, and I think there's a
Yeah.
lot more uh, acknowledgement of mutual interests
Yeah.
and scam
So
complex and
yeah,
what's
no,
happening.
that's true. So I just maybe say a couple of things. I can't thank you enough for being a part of
Oh,
the new video podcast, whatever you want to call it. I'm very new at this, and I know you're the producer of the Mekong podcast for the Diplomat, and you've done this many times. I really appreciate you coming on and
Thanks.
sharing
Look,
your wealth of expertise. Many decades of journalism from your
like
being
a
a
few of
bureau
them
chief
back.
at the AFP. I just think it's great, and it's great to reconnect.
No problem. Thanks, man.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate it.